All right, let's talk about something that hits close to home for so many of us, whether you run a business or work as a freelancer. Why on earth does the value of the Indian rupee keep changing?
You see this number flashing everywhere, right? Headlines pop up saying the rupee's crossed another new threshold against the dollar. It might just look like a number on a screen, but it has very real consequences for all of us. It can definitely feel a little chaotic, can it? Like it's just bouncing around with no rhyme or reason. So, what are the invisible forces actually pushing and pulling on the value of our money?
Well, here's the thing, it's not random at all, not even a little bit. Every single shift, whether it's big or small, is telling a story about economics, government policy, and everything that's happening around the world. So let's get into it and start decoding that story. At its very, very core, a currency's exchange rate boils down to one of the most basic rules in economics: supply and demand. You can think of it like this huge, constantly moving marketplace for money.
It's pretty straightforward, really. When lots of people want to buy rupees, maybe to invest in Indian companies, well, that demand goes up and the rupee gets stronger. But when more people are selling their rupees to buy, say, US dollars, the supply of rupees goes up and its value gets weaker. It is a constant, non-stop balancing act. And believe me, this is nothing new. The rupee has been on a long and kind of fascinating journey. Back at independence in 1947, it was fixed at about 3.3 to the US dollar. Just look at how that has changed over the years. Every single point on this timeline tells a story about a major shift in India's economy and its place in the world. So what exactly caused these shifts? Let's start with the forces outside of India's control.
Okay, so what's pulling the strings on this huge global scale? Let's kick things off with three really powerful forces that come from outside India's borders but have a massive impact on the rupee.
So you've got a few things at play here. First, there's the general health of the entire global economy. When things are going well, money flows more freely, and that usually helps the rupee. But during a crisis, investors get nervous. They don't want risk, they want safety, and that safety is almost always the US dollar, which in turn weakens other currencies. Then you've got the constant tide of investment money flowing into and out of Indian markets. And finally, you have those big, sudden geopolitical shocks that can just destroy confidence overnight.
And wow, look at how fast the tables can turn. At the start of the pandemic, this huge wave of fear washed over the markets. Foreign investors sold their Indian assets and pulled out nearly $16 billion in just a few weeks. Can you imagine the effect? It put this incredible downward pressure on the rupee. But wait, global events are only half the picture. What's happening right here inside India's own economy is just as critical. Okay, think of the interest rates set by the Reserve Bank of India as this giant magnet for money. If the RBI raises rates, it suddenly becomes way more attractive for foreign investors to park their money in India to get a better return. So what do? They buy rupees to invest, and all that demand strengthens the currency. Now, on the flip side, you've got inflation, and it's kind of like a value eraser. If inflation is high, it literally eats away at the purchasing power of your money. For investors, that's a huge red flag. It signals instability, and they're not too keen on holding a currency that's losing its value day by day. Low and stable inflation, that signals good management, and that supports a stronger rupee. So, with all these forces pushing and pulling, how does India defend itself against these sudden shocks? Well, this is where its financial shield comes in: foreign exchange reserves. The Reserve Bank of India keeps this massive stockpile of foreign currency. So, if the rupee starts falling too fast, the RBI can jump in, use these reserves to buy up rupees, and stabilize the value. It's basically the country's financial shock absorber. But there's one more piece to this puzzle, and honestly, it's a huge one. This factor isn't about products or long-term investments. It's about psychology, about market sentiment, and trillions of dollars in high-speed bets. Just try to wrap your head around this number. Every single day, over $7.5 trillion are traded on the currency markets. It's just a staggering amount. But here's the real kicker. What is all that money actually doing? This is what blows my mind. A full 90% of all that money flying around, it's pure speculation. We're talking about traders betting on which way a currency is going to move, sometimes holding that bet for just minutes or even seconds. Only about 10% is for what you and I would think of as the real economy, like actual trade or long-term investment. The speculative churn is an unbelievably powerful force that can create huge, unpredictable swings. Okay, so we've got this complex global game of economics, policy, and psychology. But the real question is, why should you care? How does this number on a screen actually land in your world and affect your business, your savings, or even the price of groceries? It's like a chain reaction, and it probably affects you more than you think. Let's say you're a freelancer who gets paid in dollars. A weaker rupee is actually great news for you. Every dollar you earn suddenly turns into more rupees. But that same weak rupee creates the next ripple. The cost of anything imported, fuel for your car, that new laptop, it all goes up. And that in turn affects a company's ability to compete globally and makes financial planning a constant headache for businesses big and small.
Look, knowing all this doesn't mean you can predict the future, right? No one has a crystal ball. But what it does do is give you the language to understand the present. It helps you see the stories hidden behind the numbers. So the next time you see a headline about the rupee, you won't just see a number. You'll see that global tug of war behind it, and you'll know exactly what to look for.